Dr. David Tuck is Assistant Professor of Audio Engineering Technology at Belmont University. He has worked for Capitol Records, Warner Chappell Music Publishing, BMG Music Publishing, Taxi, and served as a consultant for WEA Distribution. Prior to coming to Belmont University, Mr. Tuck was an assistant professor and headed the music business emphasis at Cal Poly Pomona in Los Angeles, California. He was also served as instructor of recording technology at the University of North Alabama. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in music from the University of North Texas, Master of Business Administration from Pepperdine University, and AES certificate from Pepperdine School of Law, and a doctorate in higher education administration from Tennessee State University. His research interest is in the area of recording arts curriculum development. In addition to his university teaching, Mr. Tuck has produced, engineered, and written for several independent artists in Los Angeles and Nashville, as well as writing and producing songs for major motion pictures and television. He operates as a music production company in Nashville at www.davetuck.com. He is a member of the College Music Society, National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and has served on the AES Committee in Nashville and on the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association Board. Great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you, everyone, and excited to finally present this research. It's been about 3 years in the making, but as you just heard, I have a background teaching audio at several different universities geographically around the United States, and I think that was the impetus for this research. Before I even get into it, obviously I have a passion for recording curriculum, and one thing I noticed when I was working at several of these universities is they were headed by either music business instructors, people with more experience in the music business, less experience in the recording, or administrators that had no experience in recording at all. And as recording instructors like Kevin, trying to develop fledgling programs, we're often at a loss of justification of what to teach at our particular institution. So a lot of this is going to be review for everyone that are recording arts, type of educators here, but some of it will be new knowledge. And then, of course, I hope that the results were all new knowledge to all of us looking at it. So that's the impetus for the study. And the study preparation began in December 2007. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association. That's another organization I'm involved with. And the grant was actually funded by them, like I said, to provide guidance to schools of what the heck to teach at their particular institutions. But the focus of the study is a future-oriented study rather than just now. So I used a methodology called the Delphi methodology, which I'll get into here in a moment, but it's a forward-looking, future-oriented methodology. Okay, so like I said, a lot of this information is secondhand to us. We know that recording education itself is a pretty new discipline. And I use the term AET in this particular study, Audio Engineering Technology Education. However, a lot of us call it music technology. Some of us call it, Kevin, what was the name of your sound recording technology? You can call it a cow, you can call it a dog, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm speaking to in this study. And you'll see here in a moment that the actual study is defined by the outcomes of the program rather than what we're going to name it. So, but like I said, it's a new and emerging field, so a lot of us are at a loss for materials. During my review of literature for my doctoral dissertation, I found that there was only about 4 doctoral level studies on audio curriculum, one being David Sanders in 1994, another gentleman by the name of John Leitner in 1993, and some of these studies were focused on vocational programs, some were focused on 4-year institutions, but in general, there's a real lack of literature on audio curriculum. So I encourage anyone out there in a doctoral level program to embark on this kind of research because we need more. So, and like I said, when we find ourselves in a new type of program and we're going to our administrator to say, I need 50 grand to buy a large SSL, to be able to justify that to administrators is pretty hard. So hopefully this will provide some fodder to justify ourselves. The other thing is, once again, a lot of times people, like I mentioned at the beginning of the study, a lot of times people without industry background in audio or recording arts will try to form these programs. For example, Kevin, I hate to keep picking on you, but when you guys were developing your program, where did you go to decide what you were going to teach? Okay. So for those under music schools, we can go to NASM, and we know from the last 2 years NASM has finally, and I give them applause, instituted the appendices of recording arts and what they require of recording arts programs. But what about those programs that fall under colleges of communication, or those programs like MTSU in Nashville, or those programs like Belmont, who in the past fell under a business school accreditation? Where do those administrators go? They don't have any place to go to. So that, like I said, was really one of my main concerns. And just once again, giving these individuals with no background or familiarity with the music industry some kind of starting place. And that's really all this study is a starting place. To give you an example, a lady who heads a program on the East Coast with Mia came to me after she saw this information, and she said, I really thank you, because when we were starting our music industry quote-unquote program, and that's what they called their program, we had no idea where to start. So what we did is we went to Belmont and we stole this one class, and we say we're going to steal this class's outcomes, and then maybe go to Miami and say, oh, we like kind of what they're doing, and they put their curriculum together like a smorgasbord, right? They just, paired and pieced, and then they might ask, someone with a little bit of industry experience, or maybe they even have an advisory board. Okay, so that would be the next step for a school, would maybe to form an advisory board. But even that in its scope is limited, in my opinion, because it's geographically regionalized, right? You go out and ask your advisory board, well, what DAW software should we teach? And then they say, well, you should use Digital Performer, but they might be out in Los Angeles where there's a lot of, film scoring types. So I was looking at this particular study as a, I guess, quote unquote, a national advisory board of audio curriculum, which we really don't have. So, in the past, SPARS, NAB, and private enterprise, namely people like Avid and Waves, they have their training or tutorial programs, have made recommendations of what a program should teach, but that's all they are, is recommendations. It's nothing like accreditation. So still, administrators don't have any place to go. So no accrediting body or accreditation standards really exist for our field, like I said, with the exception of NASM in the past 2 years. So the kind of the crux of the problem, obviously I've kind of stated it already, is with this transplantation of audio recording. Historically it was an apprenticeship or a mentoring system. Now we're at universities where we're teaching, and some universities teaching audio, it's literally 1 to 200. So that one-on-one ratio is now changed to 1 to 200. So how do we still implement the things that students need to learn in our curriculum? So that's really the crux of the statement and the problem. So 2 purposes of the study, and I'll show you the research questions here in a moment. It took about 2 years to complete, like I mentioned. So, but we finally got there, and what we arrived at is a list of core competencies, and that's all they are, is competencies. I think a lot of you can look at the list that's going around there. I passed it out just because I couldn't fit the whole 160 item list on the PowerPoint, but they're core competencies. They can be organized however the program wants to. If they want to put 5 of those competencies as course outcomes, they can do that and call the course Audio 1 or call it DAW 1 or whatever you want to call it. Once again, it's mainly just an organizational system with a laundry list of competencies. And depending on where those students get the competencies, that really depends on the program and the type of program. Okay, and secondly, we were looking at the technologies, because as we all know, as recording educators, technology goes hand in hand with curriculum. You can't really have one without the other, so I figured I'd put that as well. Okay, and like I said, this is really just a starting point. Now, into the limitations of the study. We're always encouraged as doctoral students to limit our study's scope, and in some ways I wanted to limit it and some I didn't, because I really wanted to speak to all of the recording schools, but I realized I couldn't do that. So at the behest of my doctoral committee, I limited the study to a 4-year institution. So I know that doesn't apply to a lot of us in here. Like I said, we're vocation or community college or maybe even a degree program. But I still think, and this is just my opinion, that you can walk away, taking some things from the study, even if you're not a 4-year institution. But what I saw with my background is the rise of especially these types of programs in the United States. So the rise of the 4-year program, and the 4-year program really not knowing what to do, because obviously if your vocational program, that is your main focus is recording arts. So it's a little less intense as far as trying to make all these decisions. Okay, so like I said, this is kind of a laundry list. I don't want to read all of them, but this is the limitations that I gave the experts that presented information to my panel. I gave them this whole laundry list of things. meaning that at the college, for instance, the student has an opportunity to take general education courses. That's one supposition that I made for the program that I'm speaking to. But I also wanted to limit the program. So I said the program employs no more than 2 full-time adjuncts, or 2 full-time audio faculty members. Because like I said, I think that's pretty much the norm. People like Belmont, NTSU's, Miami's, I think we're the exception to the norm. The programs I really wanted to speak to are those smaller programs beginning or just in the infancy of their program. So I'm going to show you one more list of, and you can read the actual study to see all the limitations, but 16 or fewer courses in the degree area. There's so many of them actually. Electives can be taken in audio. The program is going to maintain facilities and equipment. A lot of these look like NASM. Okay, so if you're familiar with the NASM guidelines, I tried to put some kind of constraint on the committee so they just weren't going, speaking to an audio recording program in Indonesia. Well, that's fine, but I wanted to limit to the United States, and I wanted to kind of limit it to the 4-year baccalaureate program. So anyway, so I'll skip past that and talk a little bit more about how I really think this speaks to outcomes. I gave the panelists these particular outcomes as well. I said that, let's take the 4-year institution out of the equation. Really, the students are going to be graduating and working in these particular job titles. And that's about as well as I could shape it, but I've tried to think of everything that encompasses what we are as AES, music production, recording engineer, mixing engineer, broadcast, manufacturing, installation, business owner, and other multimedia. So that covers a large gamut. Okay, methodology. And hopefully everyone doesn't fall asleep at this point, but this is the Delphi technique taken from the Greek oracle Delphi. And it was a technique invented in I believe it was the late 1950s by the Rand Corporation. And what they wanted to do is take a group of dispersed military strategists, experts in military, and predict what the Cold War was going to look like in 5 years, as far as what technologies the United States and Russia would have. So that's the origin of the Delphi technique. It's a bunch of experts that are geographically dispersed, and basically an expert panel that we try to get their view of what the future is going to look like. So, like I said, I'm really thinking of this as a national advisory board on audio, or a national consensus of experts in that way. Okay, a little bit more about the methodology. You have to read past all that citation, but it's a qualitative methodology that becomes a quantitative methodology. And if this interests you, you can read, like I said, the rest of the study. I'll show you the link at the end. But in general, first, we generate a laundry list. All right, so the panelists during the first round would generate a laundry list of competencies, and so they might say, well, I think an audio student needs to be able to wrap a cable. I mean, I got that, Or I think an audio student graduating in 10 years needs to know, how to build a preamp. Those would be like a competency that the panelists would suggest. So we had 52 panelists, and they all suggested this laundry list of competencies. So you can already see the research was pretty intensive, and I had to hire some research assistants. But round one, we ended up with this long list of competencies, and then I hired a third party, because I didn't want to bias the study with my own background, to put these competencies into familiar types of statements. All right, so statements that could kind of take 2 or 3 statements and make them into one. So then during round 2 of the Delphi, it's a 3-round process, the panelists were able to see the list and vote on the list. So at that point, it becomes a quantitative measure instead of a qualitative measure. So they see the list and they say, well, I don't really agree with that. I'm going to rank that the lowest. And I think that's the most important, so I'm going to rank that the highest. So that's what round 2 looked like. And then round 3, the panelists, after I arranged that list depending on their votes, and this is all happening online and asynchronous, it's through an online instrument, we were able to present the panelists again with the ranked list of competencies, and then they could either disagree and agree or agree, so they're forming a level of consensus, and or comment. So if they said, I think wrapping a cable should be the lowest on the list, and this is why, and they actually put their statement of why. So we also have verbiage at the end in the study from each panelist if they decided to participate in that. So once again, the opinions are geographically dispersed. So for the participants, I said, I don't want just the traditional music centers of Nashville, New York, and Los Angeles. I want to go to Austin. I want to go to Chicago. I want to go to Bobcats in Portland, Maine. I want to go to all these places on a national basis because our students aren't going to be graduating from necessarily, not to pick on you, Kevin, but Nacogdoches, Texas, and staying in Nacogdoches, Texas to work. They might be going to LA or New York, so we want a whole gamut of geographical opinions on what we should teach. I think I covered most of this stuff already, but it's anonymous, it's asynchronous. They had 3 weeks to complete it, so it was a lot of babysitting, calling the panelists, reminding them, not babysitting in a good way, you know, just holding their hand saying, okay, we need you to complete this instrument. And like I said, the other thing that I liked about this particular model is that a lot of times in our industry we have a lot of politics. Like if George Massenberg's sitting across the table with you and he says something, you might want to agree with George, right? So that's something we have to deal with. But in this case, they didn't know who was who, they didn't know who was on the panel, so they were able to rank these competencies. All right, I'm going to move forward a little bit more. So the panelists. Once again, this is criteria that I established after doing a lot of literature review. I defined them as experts if they had met 2 of these following 4 criteria. On the studio side, if they had sold commercial recordings of 500,000 copies or more. I know that's a pretty big number, but I really wanted the people that had really gotten into this business and been around for a while and had some success. Had been in the business minimum of 10 years. Audio Peers is an industry leader. There's a whole process that they can nominate other participants, and I won't get into that, and then we're future-oriented and inventing new technologies in their work. All right, so now that the anonymous part is done, I can actually release some of the names. So you might be familiar with some of these names on the panel, but these are the types. I don't want to dwell on this slide, but these are the types of people, if you know any of these people, that were the experts involved in this study. So I'm pretty proud of it that we were able to get that many people on that level, and you know, the time commitments to actually participate. But anyway, we started with 52 and we ended up with 32. So I think that's, as far as Delphi, that's a good number, 32 participants. All right, so running out of time here, but what essential competencies and then what technologies were the 2 research questions. So those go hand in hand. And I looked in 10 years. So my study was 2009, so 2019, if they're graduating in 2019, what the heck are they going to need to know graduating? So they really had to think about the future. Okay, I think I already covered that. Okay, so you guys have the list. So that's the final list that was generated by the panelists. And I made my own conclusions, and I'm sure we can go on forever. We can make a lot of conclusions looking at the list. If you look at the list, you know, a lot of times it looks, you know, fairly generic. You know, I mean, if I just take competency number 1 here on the list, it's demonstrate the ability to work hard and complete projects. Well, you know, as educators, that's a pretty hard thing to measure. So I'll acknowledge that a lot of these are really hard to measure. But looking at the list, I was able to personally, and this is obviously, you know, a little bit biased because it is my personal take on the list, and that's why I just passed out the list so you can make your own conclusions. But I made a few conclusions. Number 1, competencies needed by future AT grads, audio engineering technology graduates, are multidisciplinary with unique educational needs. So we saw this, I think, in the education forum. A lot of these programs are going and doing things with the AV department. They're not just staying in recording land. Or they may be going over to the physics department to take electronics courses. But it's a multidisciplinary. So that means as administrators or even program directors, we have to form these bonds with other departments at our university. We can't just stay like this with our blinders on. Number 2, you'll notice that out of the top 20 competencies, a competency that I call communications, leadership, other, basically soft or people skills, you might hear those terms thrown around, were 19 out of the top 20 skills. I don't think this is anything new for us that teach audio or even people that are in the industry, but in general, the statement I heard over and over is we can train people how to use Pro Tools, we can train people how to use SSLs, but we cannot train people how to work with clients or send legible emails or, you know, communicate basically. So that's fairly interesting. Practical skills should be balanced with and at times take priority over theoretical content. And I just made this supposition looking at the list. I just noticed a lot of practical, maybe also with a caveat that that's coming from industry and they expect some practical skills. But for us that are considering doing online programs, that's another challenge, right? Because we have to figure out how to implement practical skills as opposed to theory. Number 4, obviously this is kind of, a lot of these are kind of given. It's like what we know, but we don't really have it nailed down as audio administrators. Audio students should be offered several internship and mentorship opportunities to develop the competencies. Number 5, traditional business and music business and MIDI are important, but should be purposefully limited, meaning, some programs will say you need to take 3 music business classes as an audio engineer. You need to take survey of music business, intellectual properties, music publishing, all of these courses. And when we look at the list of competencies, the panel said, yeah, it's important, but it's not all of that. So maybe they should have 1 class in survey of music business or some type of music business to know how to operate a business, but it's not critical that they have 3 or 4. Same thing goes with music, believe it or not. They shouldn't have, and this, once again, this is just my study, so I don't want to offend all the NASM people here, but they shouldn't have 5 or 6 semesters of music theory. That's not critical. That's not the most critical thing to becoming an audio engineer, according to this ranked list. And MIDI competencies, of course, should be limited. Maybe a course on MIDI, or maybe MIDI implementation in 1 course. AET graduates should develop basic troubleshooting skills. A lot of the advanced troubleshooting was lower on the list, but at least a basic troubleshooting methodology. Audio industry, once again, this is maybe looking at the whole in the survey of the literature, or the review of the literature, should be developing and promoting some type of recommendations or standardized curriculum. And I know it's impossible to cover all the types of programs we have under AES or under MIA or whatever organization you're speaking to, but maybe a list of recommendations. So that's what I'm hoping at least I can walk out with, is someone starting a program that has no idea of where to start can at least look at it and get an idea of what's important. And then I don't have time to get into it today, but the technologies in order to teach this curriculum are identifiable. We came up with a list. And this is important for me because I've been in situations where the administrator would ask me, once again, we have 50 grand. Should we buy 1 good large format console, or should we buy 30 stations with Pro Tools? That's a hard question, right? Some of us might have an opinion one way or another, but what we found in this study is a hierarchy of technologies. And what the panelists devised was, and this is just, I'm speaking through the panelists, is DAWs, so multiple DAWs with augmented by analog outboard gear and high quality monitors. That was given a limited budget, that was what they came up with. Because the students can learn some of the analog, and learn what analog sounds like with the outboard gear, and they can also learn the DAW technologies. I also have recommendations, but I think I've kind of already spoken to some of these when I was speaking to the conclusion, so I'll just flash them up there really quick. But once again, it's a multidisciplinary field. We need to take interdepartmental interaction of some type. We need to provide coursework, obviously, whatever it is, gen ed, or writing papers, perhaps. A lot of audio courses, you might say, well, why would you write a lot of papers in an audio course? Well, to develop these communication competencies, all right? We need to emphasize practical skills, internships and mentorships, and we should then, like I said, provide some type of courses in music business, oral skills and that, but not a lot of them. Okay, so I'd rather almost interact with the audience at this point. So there's a link to the study. It's a long link. So the easiest way really to find the whole 300 and I guess it is 70 odd page study with all the lists, and I also have the list broken down by content domain: digital audio skills, general audio skills, leadership skills. Is just to Google it. It's under this particular title, and you can just find it straight on Google. And there's my email as well if you're interested in a copy of the study. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. It seems we've got question askers lined
up
already.
Yes, sorry.
The site is also on the paper that you distributed.
Yeah. I think, do we have any more papers? I know I only made 30 copies because I
think we were pretty well covered.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Questions?
Thank you for coming. This is a really interesting report. I look forward to it in some respects. Appreciate all your study. My question is, now that you've put together this amazing panel and all this great data, is there any thought or plan to follow up with another study in the future to update this information? Obviously, the world things change quickly. That's my first this day and age, that would be highly
Mhm.
recommended.
And once again, these are sometimes hard for me to speak to, but speaking to point number one, I'm just one guy, so all I can do is throw it out there. And I made a presentation to the AES Education Committee. I've also made a presentation at MIA, and whatever organization wants to take this and run with it, I'm fine with that. So, speaking to repeating the study, Delphi's, they recommend every 5 years that you should repeat it. And I think a really interesting study for those of you guys that are ever considering a doctoral dissertation would be to repeat the same methodology but use educators as opposed to industry, and then compare and contrast. I think that'd be really interesting. To speak to the entrepreneurship, like I said, I agree with you that we're moving to that model in this business. Perhaps I'm just, theorizing what the panelists may have been thinking in their brain, that the student could get some of that exposure through the internship or the mentorship. I don't know. It's an interesting question, but thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So I wanted to ask you, we just went through this, and if you started this in 07, you probably didn't catch our program at Montana State. We just got through accreditation in fall. So that I hadn't seen this before, but this is kind of cool. And we've been through this whole process. My question for you.
Now, are you guys School of Music or?
Yes.
Okay.
We're in the Department of Music,
Okay.
Music Technology. So my question for you would be, for the programs that grow out of music departments, to which there's a strong music composition component as part of the degree, can you call that audio engineering technology? Is it really the same thing? And how many of your panelists were composers?
That's a good question. Panelists as composers, I don't think we had too many. Now, they may have been, when I say audio engineering, I'm really focusing on the word engineering. They may have been in the film scoring, but they're mainly recordists and not on the composition side. So that's where it's kind of hard to determine schools of music, because you guys already have NASM. But where it may apply, let's say you guys really get a growth or a bulk like we did at Belmont. In the last 2 years at Belmont, we actually are now the independent College of Entertainment and Music Business. We broke off from the music department, or we were under the College of Business because we were such a large entity. And my thinking is that might be, as our types of programs grow, that might be kind of the future trend of us establishing ourselves as independent departments, and that's kind of what that speaks to. But if you fall under NASM, it's I think the NASM guidelines obviously are going to guide you, pretty well. This might be something to augment that, but.
Well, what I would ask you is what is going to be applicable, and what would you say to the contention that music composition and audio engineering are not as separate as a lot of people think they are? And so you're working with the recorded sound, you're putting effects on your recorded sound. When did the composition stop and the mixing begin? There's a lot of bleed over, and that's what we're trying to capture where we are.
Yeah.
How many other programs are doing that?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it a lot, but I'm curious.
In NYU people here, I know you guys do it at NYU. And that's the difficulty, obviously. It's a multidisciplinary field. So, we are under a business school, but we send our students over to the music department if they're interested in taking more courses in composition for electives or whatever. But the best answer I could give to that is, those electives, those multidisciplinary or interdepartmental interaction is where that might fit into these recommendations. Where if they were curious, they could go over and take more classes with another department.
Then when you get your list of names, I didn't see a lot of broadcasters. How much broadcasting did you focus on?
See,
And the reason I ask is their jobs in broadcasting.
Yeah, and see, that's where it's kind of hard for me, but it's also a benefit to the study is I didn't actually pick the people myself. I had 3 research assistants, and I said I want at least, I think, and it's not on this particular PowerPoint, but I said I want at least 2 individuals from, well, let me go back here, each of these fields. Basically, the laundry list that I showed you of the careers, right here, I want at least 2 people out of the 52 in each of these careers. So that's what we started with. So I really don't know how many broadcasters to answer that question. So
one of the things that is going on right now, SVG is the Sports Video Group, and we are looking to develop a product for it. Because today we're getting students in broadcasting that they can be music producers.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 years later, we get them because they did successful music production. As I said, there are jobs.
Sure.
So we're seeing woefully inadequately educated students coming to us, and most of them do get turned away from internships. I would like to see more of what we call apprenticeships.
Yes.
And things like that, and mentoring, maybe not so much emphasis on internship. But who we work with, we're in the process now of developing a proper curriculum.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of my second book with TV sound engineering.
Sure.
But it's not difficult. I said the most frustrating thing for me is SAE and things like that, which is a whorehouse sweatshop type of operation. And I don't think they're not. But the fact is, they're not getting jobs. They're not hiring.
Right.
At the Olympics, which I do full-time sound design, we have the host broadcast training program. And for my last 8 Olympics, we hired 1,000 students.
Wow.
It's been a very successful program. Beginning in 1996, I had a class of 386 full-time students.
Yeah.
So can I contact you directly?
Oh yeah, and I just speaking to that, I think this methodology would be great to narrow it down. This is so big, you know. But if you could just narrow the whole Delphi methodology, go out and get 50 experts from broadcast, you know, that would be great if we could start to narrow these down. So.
I'm glad I work together.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't want to develop the skill.
Yeah.
I want to develop the career.
That's true.
Hi.
Yes.
We're just starting local university of Western Ontario, which was a substantial music program. They started, so there are more students before they attend community college. And they'll take the technology because we teach music production and recording and music business. They will take recording course and get their skills.
Yeah.
Recording. So I think that addresses your question. That's a possibility for music because but most of the work that's a model that's put together.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Those reciprocal things, they're valuable. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, they exist in a couple of programs in college where we have collaboration with programs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, we've very closed down this session as far as the broadcasting of questions goes, but let's carry on the session. We're okay with that. If you wanting to ask questions, you could come and chat together.
Or just email me because I have to catch a flight pretty soon. But appreciate it. Thank you.